In this approach to philosophy, I have found one of the essential core truths to teaching worldview and to teaching philosophy is to help students as best as possible understand A, what grace is, but B, not just what it is, why. Why this living, breathing, loving God of the universe would choose to save human beings through the method of grace. If we don't understand that, when we approach worldview, when we approach philosophy this way through trust lists, there will be an undercurrent, a backdrop of fear. There will also be a readiness to slide into, I need to figure this all out, and if I don't, then if theism is correct, I could get it wrong or not be good enough and then be separated from this loving God forever, which then doesn't even make sense on why he's loving. That's terrifying when we approach philosophy. The other thing that I think is really important is that if we're going to take this whole trustless concept and end up at the fullness of Christ as a living being, why would this being save us through grace when there could be theoretically other options? And I think that this approach to philosophy gives us those two things in a very clear picture. Grace is this gift, it's this gift of, especially in the context of Christ and what he's done on the cross and his resurrection, is a gift of being made whole, of being made right, of being made in the fullness of who you are so you can dwell with the fullness of reality. God's going to be perfect, and he's going to have perfect standards. I've never had a student in class raise their hand and say that they were perfect. This creates a big tension. But if God's going to have perfect standards, and if we need to know the fullness of reality and understand our need to be whole and complete in order to dwell with wholeness and completeness in a relationship, how do I resolve that tension? It is huge tension. And so I have come to terms that if we don't have grace when we live on Faith Island, that will create an unbridgeable chasm, and we will slide into suicide of thought. The beauty of understanding grace, which is a trust in the gift of being made whole and being made right with God, I am then free to dwell on Faith Island, to look at all these different questions, to see all these different answers that are available to me, and do the best that I can while covered by grace to pursue the fullness of reality in Christ. And when I get it wrong, because none of us are going to fully get it right, because we are not the fullness of reality, I can be at peace, knowing that I've done my best, and through understanding the fullness of reality more, I have found the fullness that Christ wants to give me. I have found freedom and hope and life, so the pursuit was worth it. But I don't have to pursue this truth, pursue understanding, pursue all this knowledge, pursue all this information with a fear that if I get it wrong, or I get something wrong, or that I have messed up, that I am now held accountable to that in a way that I cannot overcome on my own. You can see the tension there, because without grace offered by the God who set this whole system up and stuck us on Faith Island, he almost ends up being a cruel God who says, you need to figure this out, and if you don't get it right, you're stuck. Without grace, where he says, yeah, you need to figure this out, and I know that you're approaching this whole thing through faith, and that you really have to go off of trust, since you can't know something for 100% certitude. since I've created this situation and I know that you can't know something for certitude, then trust me that I will cover you by my grace on this journey, on the unfinished story. So I teach that grace is the finished story. If you're going to trust anything, trust in a loving God who will save you from this Faith Island situation by grace. And then now you get to continue on the unfinished story of getting to know this God and build your trust list without the fear of eternal punishment, without the fear of eternal condemnation, without the fear of having to clean yourself off. Because quite frankly, if you have to make yourself perfect and you're already imperfect, then you can't perfectly do it, because you'd have to be perfect to do it perfectly, and you're not. And even talking about the whole concept of grace, one of the things that it does that is super important for students to understand is it frees them up to not get this all right. 1 Corinthians even talks about we see through a glass darkly. Then we shall see face to face. We need to do the best we can with what we have. That allows us to get out of suicidal thought and move forward with freedom and hope. It also allows us to not weigh ourselves down with guilt and fear. But the other thing that I love about it, especially in a classroom setting, is that it frees us up to extend that grace to other people on their journeys, even other worldviews and other philosophies and other trust lists. We are all on a journey, and I get to extend grace to you as you are processing out your understanding of the fullness of reality, and as you are piecing together your trust list. That is so important in a classroom setting, let alone our global setting. And that is another essential component to grace. It's so exciting that if we can accept this concept of grace, it allows us to move forward in solidarity, really.